Chapter 70. Blue. My head is pounding when I wake up. My eyes only give me a half-conscious, fuzzy image to work with as I try to blink the sleep away. I can't help but notice the light filtering through the trees in soft, broken rays. The birds aren't too noisy, though at least the winter chill is keeping away most of the insects. My mind grinds to a halt at that. I know it's winter, but why the hell am I outside? I have less than a second before I realize how distinctly warm I am, something that doesn't make sense when I can see my own breath in the cold morning air. Slowly I become more aware of my own body. I'm trapped in a sleeping bag, wrapped up in layer after layer of clothing. There's a dull ache in my body as I try to move around, like I'm recovering from a bad cold. I sit myself up, reluctantly facing the chill in the air as I check around the campsite. There's a rolled sleeping bag next to me and 2 matching backpacks within arm's reach, and I fumble with the one my brain has assigned mine for a moment before pulling out my water skin. Stars, my mind wonders, unprompted. Why the hell am I here? I don't usually have this much trouble waking up. Distantly, I'm sure I don't usually have the luxury, but my head is pounding and my throat is so dry. Suddenly, everything rushes back to me. The assignment, the forced jaunt through the woods, crashing into the river looking for that imp. The flower. I feel my cheeks heat as I am momentarily sure that all the blood in my body has rushed to my face. How could I have forgotten about the flower? Those thorny vines, the way the pollen had made my head feel light, and then... There's an absurd impulse to dive back into my sleeping bag, zip it up from the inside, and just stay in there for the foreseeable future. It is much better than the alternative of facing the consequences of my actions. There's a low, keening sound that takes me a minute to recognize as myself. My fingers tangle themselves into my hair as I try to keep myself from passing out. This is fine. This is okay. Nothing's wrong. I fucked my master. My mind replays the events of last night. How eager I had been, how forceful and unrepentant. I had been so scared when he... Stars. When he slid himself down on my dick. It had felt so good. The hot, tight clench of his body around me. I could understand why so many had enjoyed it, but that thought snapped unnatural clarity back into my mind. I didn't want him to have to suffer through this like I did. He shouldn't have to use his body. I didn't want to hurt him. But he had found his own pleasure in the act. More than just accidental stimulation. More than when my masters played with my body to make me come. I'm sure I'm turning bright red with the amount of heat I can feel burning my cheeks. My mind won't stop playing the events of last night in my head, and the memory of the arousal pulls at me, but there's absolutely no way I could get hard right now. My memories play in an odd order, only giving me the highlights of what I've missed. Stars, I fucked my master. And not just once. Kara had to show me the ropes in the beginning, but the more the haze took over my mind, the less I was afraid. I lost count of how many times we actually fucked, how many ways. I'm not even confident I remember it all, whole minutes missing from my memory at a time, before the effects of the flower dropped me and Kara had tucked me into bed. Stars, I fucked my master. I can't stifle the sound I make, though I can't tell exactly what the noise was meant to be. It's something of a choked moan, but far too high and whiny to be anything that dignified. I momentarily think I'm going blind when my eyes fill with tears. I'm not sure what I'm crying for. Not really. There's no real sadness, no fear or pain, but the tears come regardless. Suddenly, I'm sobbing like a child in the middle of the stars-damned forest, and there's nothing I can do about it. My head swims and I go lightheaded for a moment as I hold my breath in an attempt to get myself back under control. My mind comes back to me enough that I run a quick little checkup on myself, ticking off the most commonly affected things first. I'm really not hurt anywhere. The effects of the Roki whatever plant has left my body for good. I'm just feeling overwhelmed. It doesn't seem like much in the long run, not against everything I've held my own against, but that didn't stop me from blathering like a child because of it. My chest hurts and my whole body aches as I remember those were some of the things that Kara had warned me about. He'd said that once the effects of the plant left me, there would be a whole bunch of things to look out for. Where is Kara? My ears perk as I spin a quick circle around our campsite. He wasn't here when I woke up, but his stuff was still here. He wouldn't leave me, would he? Stars, I've made such a mess of things it wouldn't even be wrong of him to leave me here. He hadn't seemed like anything was wrong. In fact, he'd quite enthusiastically said otherwise. But the harsh light of day has a way of changing people's minds. "Help! Help!" The sharp, raspy voice breaks me out of my tumbling line of thought just before a small creature jumps onto me, climbing me like a ladder before it plants itself behind my head and uses my ears like their grasping points. I'm trying to bat the creature away from my ears, mind racing, when I see Kara follow him out of the brush. "Come here, you little Oh, Blue, you're awake?" The angry, tense lines of his body mold into something much kinder as he addresses me. "I'm not an imp! He's lost his mind!" The little thing in my hair chitters, pulling at my hair as though he could use me as a mount to get away. "Master?" I ask hesitantly, but Kara's pulling on a pair of gloves, more or less ignoring me while the creature in my hair gets more and more frantic. Eventually it gives up its place in my hair, making a break for the tree line, but it doesn't get too far before Kara's knocked the thing to the ground, picking it up by its stubby little wings as it can only jerk in his grasp. The thing's actually a little bigger than I thought it was. It's a little jarring to see the imp's protruding fangs and whipcord-like tail, but I never did ask for a description of what an imp looked like. It's a pale green color, mottled with dark spots, but there's a shock of gold around its eyes. Gold swirly lines and dots coming out from its eyes, decorating an odd-looking face. It takes me a minute to recognize the tattoo for what it is. The tattoos presumably continue beneath the creature's clothing, and as it struggles, I do recognize the same curling lines turning into sigils further up on its head. I'm not quite sure what the sigils mean, but even I can see the large painted eye. It looks almost like there's an inset emerald in the imp's head with those tattooed lines ringing it in gold, until it resembles something like the tattoos the imp has around its eyes. "Master, what are—" I try to ask, but he cuts me off. "Treated gloves. This way he can't teleport around." He responds in clipped sentences as he tries to wrestle the imp into submission before he can get away again. "Oh," I say, feeling rather foolish. "So this is—" I leave the question open, hoping that Kara will just fill me in. "Right," he says brightly, turning to me as though he's just realized that I wasn't exactly conscious for the past however many hours, and he has to explain what's happened in that time. "This is Kewin. He's what we came out here looking for." "Oh, I was mistaken," the little imp, Kewin, says. His nasally voice grates on my ears, but something tells me he's playing it up because he knows it's bothersome. "See, I thought you two were just looking for some time alone in the woods, but if you were looking for little old me—" Kara flicks at one of Kewin's elongated ears, forcing a yelp from the creature as it does its best to curl away from him. "He also has something he wants to apologize for." Kara speaks like he's grinding his teeth as he kneels down and brings the imp to my eye level. "I do." The imp cranes his neck up to glance confusedly at Kara before he flicks the imp's other ear.
"Ah, you're right, I do,"
he screeches as he tries to put his hands over his ears, but they're far too big to be covered by his hands. What is happening? I feel my voice crack in my throat, and I want nothing more than to just sit and drink my fill of a water skin. Kara's acting kind of strangely, too. I've never seen him like this. Even though the imp doesn't seem to be in any real pain, Master is still purposefully tormenting it. I've never seen him in such a foul mood, or so ready to inflict a punishment, even one that is obviously mild. The imp struggles for a few seconds more before he simply crosses his arms and pouts.
"I'm sorry I let the two of you get out of each other's way,"
he grumbles out, before Kara flicks him again.
"Ah, fine! I'm sorry about the Rokatari. Ya happy?"
The Rokatari. I can feel my heart speed as I process the imp's words. He was responsible for the Rokatari? Oh, stars, that wasn't a coincidence?
"Not happy," Kara grumbles. "What you did was risky and could have been really dangerous and gotten Blue hurt. And that doesn't even begin to address the way the nature of the plant forced him to—"
Kara tries to continue, but the imp cuts him off.
"Forced? I may not live by your rules, but I know what consent is, wizard boy,"
he hisses, renewing his struggling against Kara's hold. Kara starts to protest, but whatever he was going to say dies on his lips. My face is on fire. For a second it's hard to breathe, and it's all I can do not to crawl right back into my sleeping bag. If the plant didn't come upon us by accident, then that means that this whole situation could have been avoided if I had just been paying attention, if I hadn't gotten so distracted. My mind jumps to another terrible thought. If this was planned, then had the imp been watching us? Suddenly, I really don't want an answer to that. The thought that both Kara and I had been spied upon makes me a little sick, but knowing that the imp might have witnessed us together makes me feel shaky inside. Stars, when did I start having trouble saying that someone had sex with me? That my master and I fucked? I'm no blushing virgin, and yet this all feels so terribly new that I'm nearly frightened by it. Perhaps because it is so new. At least to me, anyways. I wasn't lying to Kara last night. I did want to have sex, sort of. It isn't the memory of the plant or the unbound lust running through my veins that gives me pause. More that I was confused by the way we'd gone about it. When Kara and I are together, fuck is simply the wrong word. I've lived most of my life getting fucked. And what Kara does to me is certainly not that. He's always so hesitant with me. He treats me like I'll break with the slightest pressure. I still don't entirely understand why, but I can't exactly bring myself to be upset about it. It feels wrong, like he shouldn't be bothering with so much effort. But I want to be appreciative. I want to be grateful. But the way the imp is giggling at me makes my skin crawl. As familiar as I am with sex, I'm not so well versed in the intimacy that Kara seems to expect. But I'm learning. I'm learning about myself, my own preferences, how to feel comfortable in my own skin. Right now, I know I don't like this imp, and I want to get out of this forest. Master, we have the imp. Are we done? I wince at the forcefulness of my own voice, but I can't bring myself to regret my words. I want to get out of here. The woods are putting me on edge. Everything in this place seems to have the distinct desire to fuck with us, and I don't want to spend any more time here than necessary. I feel a little bad at the way Kara shrinks back at my words. I know he likes it out here, for some reason that's beyond my comprehension. Just another little thing I've learned about myself, I suppose. I like being indoors more than out. Though that may just be a side effect of all the shit that seems to go down in this forest. Even still, I'm not overly fond of Kara's little backyard creatures, and though he tries to be nice about it, I know I'm not really that much of a help in his garden.
Not quite, Kara says, bringing me back to reality. We need the binding object, and someone is being a little less than cooperative.
Well, if I just gave you the answers, what kind of test would that be?
The imp huffs impatiently, still struggling against the gloves.
You know about the exam?
Kara asks, seemingly confused by the imp's words.
Yeah, you students come crashing through the forest at regular intervals, and you think the intelligent beings don't notice?
The imp questions, almost insulted by the insinuation.
Huh.
Kara nods hesitantly, but the imp doesn't seem convinced that he's being genuine.
What? You never thought we could piece things together?
He accuses, wiggling as much as he can in Kara's hand, then resting his head on his hands and glaring at the two of us.
Some quests are more repetitive than others, but we do prepare ourselves for these kinds of things. I plan out little tests so that even us little beasties can provide a good challenge.
The imp beams with pride, showing off his rows of sharp teeth as he smiles.
My tests can be a lot of things, though most people don't usually find me quite this soon. My little hunt has always been more about running out the clock than anything, but that doesn't seem to be an option now, does it?
He pouts. Your test? I can't help but ask. The creature is so different from what I was expecting, and it certainly seems more intelligent.
Well, they do these things so regular, I have to switch it up. Gotta provide new and exciting content. Otherwise, people might think my quest is boring or easy.
He quirks a brow at me, and I can't help but shrink back against the judgmental look. I don't know much. I hadn't really thought much of the quest we'd been sent on. I don't have a lot of knowledge about the things in this forest, but given how some of the other students had been reacting, there was an obvious difficulty scale in the assignments. I thought that this one wouldn't be too difficult, but how did the imp know that?
How many people have succeeded in the past few years?
Kara asks the better question, and I take advantage of the excuse to busy myself with folding up my sleeping bag and fiddling with my backpack to try and ignore the imp.
In the past few years? None. I run a tight ship here. But there was one girl about 7 years ago. She got me.
The imp gives a little squeal, seemingly very pleased with his track record, and I try to ignore the way my master's face darkens at the creature's glee.
A ship so tight you send a whore's rose bush after us?
He pokes at the creature, but he doesn't flick at its ears again.
Hey, I'm allowed to have my fun.
The imp squeals as he tries to avoid Kara's hand. Master, how are we supposed to figure out which object is the one we need? I hesitate to bring more attention to myself, but we still have access to the imp's treasure trove, and I really want to get out of here.
Well, that depends.
The imp sneers.
I am forbidden from telling you all directly, and even if I wasn't, that wouldn't be very fun. So it's a test. Either you're good at divination magic and you already know, or you're real good at getting information out of unwilling participants.
His words make me cringe, but he doesn't seem as worried about the prospect as I am. The imp's gaze finds mine, and he gives a crooked little smile as his eyes flash with a light, like a predator in the darkness.
You little...
Kara starts, but the imp cuts him off.
Hey, don't look at me so darkly, strangeling. You'll scare your precious Demi.
He sneers, expression going dark. What? I don't have time to fully contemplate the imp's odd words. Whatever he says freaks Kara out as well, and his hold loosens on the creature just long enough for the imp to struggle free. Its bite must be very powerful even through the glove, because Kara gives a yelp as the thing darts away into the forest.
What do we do now?
I ask, watching the space in the forest that the imp disappeared into. Kara doesn't seem to be gearing up for a chase, but at his confused gaze I simply gesture vaguely to the forest and repeat what I'd thought was obvious. He got away.
He wasn't going to help us anyways.
Kara shrugs, stripping off the glove to examine the reddened skin underneath.
But we've still got his treasure hoard. It shouldn't be too hard to figure this out on our own.
I look back at the bunch of trinkets that wait in the little alcove we had found the night before. At least we know now that this really is the imp's hoard instead of belonging to some pseudo-dragon. I may not be very well read in the realm of magical creatures, but that particular species has come up in my book. They were supposed to be very small dragonkin that had all the hoarding instincts of their larger cousins, but not much of the same power or influence.
So it's something in here?
I clarify, looking Kara over for some semblance of the prickly creature he was when he talked to the imp, but all of that seems to have melted away with the imp's hasty retreat.
Yeah.
He nods along, confirming my assumption.
But you don't want to go touching anything. Any piece of this hoard might be booby-trapped or cursed.
I place my hands in my pockets, like I wasn't just about to reach into the pile of objects. Kara goes back to his pack, rifling through his things and muttering to himself. I suppose he thought the imp would be able to tell him which object he was bound to. I wonder if he would have hurt the little creature to make it give him answers. But I don't let my mind dwell too long on that. The creature got away, and Master showed no desire to chase it, so there's no point in letting those thoughts tear me up. I focus on the collection of items instead. Kara's pulling out some components behind me, so I don't doubt there's a plan, though it's probably not something that I could help with. The little hoard seems pretty eclectic. There's some tarnished bent rings, a couple of stray rough-cut gems, a fine-looking necklace on a thin chain, and what looks like a collection of acorns. Perhaps not the most fantastical of hoards, but the objects obviously have some significance to this creature. My mind flashes to the curled tattoos the imp had on his face. I wonder if that's a standard thing for imps, or if this one is special. Of course, this imp is different from others of its kind, I chuckle at myself. Kara had said that imps had to be special to be bound. Still, I'm not sure if the thing had managed to get those markings before or after it got bound. My bet is on after, or at the very least around the same time as it was being bound, as I continue to examine the collection. The necklace is a simple cut emerald, but there have been some pains to disguise the gem. There's mud caked over the setting, and one of the acorns has been pasted into the space where the gem should be. But the curling lines, not disguised by the little twigs, are too close to the markings on the imp's face for me to ignore.
Whoa! Blue, the hell do you think you're doing?
Kara's hand is around my wrist before I realize I'd been reaching into the little alcove. I'm sorry. I stumble on my own words as I try not to flinch. It sounds weak, pitiful, and in no way enough to make up for my error. He warned me explicitly not to touch anything. He said that it was dangerous, and I just ignored him. The idea leaves me feeling shaky and fearful, even more so because he hasn't let go of my arm. My mind flashes unwillingly to the way Master had treated the imp. Kuen, who Master had obviously been angry with, didn't receive the kindness that I thought came so naturally. Master had been cold and exacting and so much like a normal master that I could barely watch. It's odd. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised to see this side of him, even if it took so long for it to come out. He couldn't simply lack the ability to get angry and act out in his frustration, though it does poke holes in my theory that this was the case. He was so kind to me, but in the back of my mind I always knew that it was only a matter of time. I should be glad that it takes so much to pull even this muted anger from him, but I feel too shaky inside to be relieved.
Blue.
Master goes to speak, but I need to say my piece before he passes down his judgment. Didn't... I try to speak, but my voice dies on me before I can finish the thought. It's a lie, anyways, and I know better than to lie to my master. It's better that I don't say anything. I didn't mean anything bad, but that's not true either. I meant to pick up the necklace. That was bad, because Master had told me not to. It wasn't even some arbitrary rule. It was something to keep me safe. I can accept the punishment for my failures, but I'll be damned if I add more offenses to the list. I should be happy to belong to a master like this. It's a dream come true. The first time he's truly angry, and it's with someone else. He doesn't even lash out at me, doesn't make it my fault when I'm the only one in reach. This should be the highlight of my fucking existence. A master who's hard to anger. So why do I want to curl up and hide? Maybe because he's still angry, and the imp is gone now. Kewin's not absorbing any of the anger from my master. He's gone, but the tense line of Kara's body has stayed. He's still got my arm, and now it's not Kewin's fault, it's mine. He's got to be angry with the imp, even still, and I've managed to associate my actions with something he hates so much.
Blue, tell me what's wrong.
Master orders, but funny thing, it doesn't sound much like the orders I'm used to. It sounds more like a request. It sounds like he's concerned. I'm sorry. It all comes out in a rush, as suddenly my lungs cease to serve their only function. At least that isn't a lie. You don't have to be sorry, Blue. Just tell me what's wrong, Kara murmurs. I wait for his grip on me to become painful. In the beginning, I had thought his calm to be something fragile, that if I broke it, he would snap, and the pain would come swiftly, fueled by anger with nothing to guide it. I had thought that the anger would run hot, but as soon as it was left to cool, the kind master would be back. He'd treat my wounds and speak softly around me for days, worried that he'd scared me. In my more daring, imaginative mind, I'd take advantage of that regret. I had had masters like that. Masters who liked to play at being calm and kind, and once their anger cooled again, they'd go back to the act. Though he was the first to help me with my wounds. For some reason, they had always locked me away after they snapped. I presumed they didn't want to be reminded of their lapse. Either way, I know better now. My master is too well in control of himself to punish in a fit of anger. He wouldn't be the kind to react in a fit of rage. No, he's too careful for that, too exacting. He treats his body like it's some kind of honed weapon, and worse, he knows more about the way my body ticks than I do. He pulls me forward, and all I can do is whimper before I realize I'm being slotted against his body. His arms encircle me loosely, and he places one hand on my chest. I wish it felt less good to be in his arms. There's a pre-existing connection in my brain that associates him with safety, and I'd rather not feel comforted right now. Not if I'm right, and I'm about to be punished. The fear in my mind still remains stubbornly disconnected from the comfort of his arms. There's something in the warmth of his presence that almost works its way into me from the inside out. The strength in his arms that makes me want to go limp and press back into his body.
Blue, I need you to listen to me. Nod if you can listen.
He speaks with an inordinate amount of calm, and I have just a second to be jealous before I process what he's said. It's not so much a nod as a sharp jerking of my head. It isn't until I'm questioning why he would want a nod over words that I realize I'm gasping for breath. He gives me a second, until I'm finished nodding, before he puts a little pressure on my chest, pressing down just enough for me to feel him even through the panic. Blue, I want you to focus, okay? I want you to try to breathe with me. Understand? His voice is a little higher than usual, his words coming in clipped little questions as he waits for me to nod again. Given how often I breathe without thinking about it, it feels odd to have to focus so completely on the deceptively simple activity. I try desperately to focus on anything else, certain that if I'm doing something else, the natural skill of breathing will come back to me. I turn myself to the side, burying my nose into my master's jacket, inhaling his scent. I don't think I've ever needed it more than I do now. It's like a message is sent to my whole body, reminding me where I am and who I'm with. This is Kara, and his scent means safety. It always has. I take another deep breath, letting the complex combination roll through my body as Kara breathes with me. His chest is pressed into my back, and he's taking long, exaggerated breaths just to help me feel the proper motions. I wait for him to start again before I allow myself another breath. He's going so slow it's hard not to have my breathing even out. I can feel my thundering heart beat slow with another breath, the excess adrenaline leaving me limp and pliable against my master. I barely have the energy to make a little mewl as I curl further into his coat, pressing my face into the scent as thoroughly as possible. Kara waits, for far longer than he should. He waits for my breathing to even out. He waits for my hands to stop shaking. He waits for me. I would cry if I had the energy. Blue. I hear Kara start, but I can't. I just can't hear him say what I already know, so I say it first. I'm broken. My voice cracks under the strain of the words. I shouldn't be surprised. Hell, I should be thankful that my throat still works at all after all that I've put it through. No, you're not. He says it so definitively, like he's reading off a fact from a textbook. You had a panic attack, that's all. But if you can, I'd like to know what it was about. I hear the whimper before I realize I'm the one making it. What am I supposed to tell him? Sorry I panicked. I saw you being a little bit mean to an imp, and I let myself forget months of your retraining. I forgot who I was with for a minute, and I didn't want to be hurt. I got caught up in a cluster of old memories, and I forgot you ever existed. I squirm in his arms half-heartedly. I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted me out of his lap. He shouldn't have to waste time with me. But he just levers me into a more stable position and wraps his arms more securely around me. It's all right. Don't say anything. You don't have to say anything. He consoles me in a soft voice, gently petting my hair. You're angry with me? I mumble into his coat. It's not a question, so I don't bother asking. I know it's a fact. No, I'm not. Kara gives a little huff. I'm just worried. I just told you how dangerous that was. I don't want you getting hurt. Some magical objects are capable of thrall. It doesn't matter. I thought the markings on the imp's face, they looked a lot like the ones on the necklace. I explain, folding my hands to my chest to keep myself from turning around and curling in Kara's coat, pulling him closer until there's no room for air between us. Kara ends up making the decision for me, turning me until we're chest to chest. I try to keep my hands to myself, but he just rubs those soothing circles into my back, and suddenly I'm clinging to him like he's the only stable point in the universe. He doesn't say anything about the way my fingers bunch the fabric of his coat, or my stuttery little gasps. He just holds me, continuing his soothing little motions.
Really?
Kara continues, like I'm not freaking out in his arms. And I realize he didn't get a good look at the imp while he was holding him, but he'd held the little creature up to my face. I saw these little gold tattoos. They look like the setting. I gesture to the necklace. And an emerald right on his forehead. I point, mirroring where I had seen the gem.
All right.
Kara nods along with my explanation, though the wariness doesn't leave his eyes.
I'm not very good at divination magic, but I've got enough to check for a curse at least. If it's not dangerous, how about we check out that one?
He offers, and I can't help the warm feeling it leaves in my chest. He's trusting me. Even though he's wary, he's still trusting my judgment. Divination magic apparently takes a lot of time. It's a lot of incense and candles and a polished crystal on a chain moving so repetitively that I can feel my mind going numb. There's some chant to go along with it, but the words don't make sense to me. I figure it's got to be some other language, but it doesn't sound like the type of words Kara uses when he usually does magic. Even the longest spells end, though, and Kara eventually comes back into his body with a jolt. He shakes his head like he's trying to clear it, but when he looks back at me, his eyes still seem a little hazy.
Well, it's got a magical aura, but nothing immediately harmful,
Kara says slowly, but I'm too eager to let him finish. This assignment has already caused us enough trouble. This whole forest has caused us enough trouble. I want nothing more than to be out of this place and pretend like this whole day was nothing more than one bad dream. I grab the necklace. There's a flash of green-tinted light, and I swear I can taste pine sap at the back of my throat as my vision clears. Whatever precautions the imp had taken, the mud and twigs pressed into the necklace have cleared away, leaving a very beautiful, very intricate emerald necklace in my hands.
Stars! Blue! I was going to grab it! It could be dangerous!
Kara jolts, giving me a quick inspection before he starts manually checking me over for, I don't know, a gaping wound, perhaps?
Oh, you guys are no fun!
That sharp, nasally voice calls, and I have to force myself out of Kara's hands to turn to face the imp. He's sitting right behind me with his legs crossed, sulking like a child. The image is so ridiculous that I couldn't hold in my laughter if I wanted to.
It's not much of a challenge if you have the same markings as your object,
I chide, holding out the necklace to show just how perfectly the curling pattern matches up.
Yeah, well, there's not much I can do about that, but I disguised it as best I could,
he shrieks, his cheeks going dark, and I have exactly 1 moment to consider if I've actually managed to offend him before he darts forward. He jumps on the necklace, flapping his wings frantically as he tries to pull it from my grasp, but I had a firm hold on it, and he doesn't seem to have much actual strength. He makes an unhappy chittering sound as he lets go, slumping to the ground and spreading himself out on the forest floor dramatically.
Oh, but the mighty seeing Kewin has been outsmarted, and his object taken custody. How will I ever recover?
He wails, kicking his feet in the air before going limp on the forest floor. My hands hover above Kewin's body. He hadn't seemed hurt, but he's stopped moving. I haven't hurt him on purpose, but maybe I shouldn't have picked up his necklace without thinking of the potential ramifications. I take the opportunity to look over the little creature. He doesn't seem injured, but I don't know much about these types of creatures. The imp is significantly smaller than I thought it would be. From head to toe, he's only a couple of inches taller than my hand from wrist to fingertips. His wings are leathery, with 2 little gold rings pushed through the thinner bits of his left wing. I lean in close, giving him a cursory sniff. He smells like the forest and mint. But before I have the chance to consider anything else, his whole body launches towards my face. I yelp, but he does nothing more than press both of his tiny hands against my nose before he falls back, roaring with laughter. I'm not sure exactly what Kewin finds so funny, but whatever it is, he seems entirely occupied with it. Kara gives an exasperated little sigh, but chuckles along with the imp.
Well, I suppose now that this whole thing is over with, we can head back,
Kara says, rolling his shoulders as he ties his bedroll to his pack and throwing all of the little components that he'd used back into his bag. I join him, tying up my sleeping bag as I look over our campground. Master, where's your jacket? I ask. He's not wearing it, but I don't see it anywhere around the camp either. He's still got his big coat, but the fleecy, soft material he'd been wearing underneath is gone. I'd liked that jacket. He let me wear it sometimes, right after it came out of the dryer and it was warm. All of his clothes drown me, but I can't deny the comfort I take in it.
I left it at the campsite when I ran to find Kewin.
Kara hesitates, and something tells me he's not giving me the full truth. But it's not here. I speak hesitantly. Kara liked that jacket almost as much as I did.
What?
Kara stops messing with his backpack, his entire body locking up as he looks up at me with wide, almost fearful eyes. It wasn't there when I woke up, I clarify, trying not to shrink in on myself as much as I want to.
It must have been one of the vicious animals that did it.
Kewin stares blankly ahead, that bizarre eye-shine ghosting over his features before he seems to shake it off.
A vicious animal that just so happened to spare Blue? Kara probes, disbelief coloring his voice as he watches the imp crawl over to me.
Spare is sort of subjective in this case,
the imp confesses, though he's not really paying any attention as he's more focused on climbing up my coat than anything else. It's kind of cute, the way he's trying so hard to climb up when he's got wings. There's an easier way, but he doesn't seem inclined to take it. It only takes him a few moments to perch himself on my shoulder. He seems content to simply sit there, tangling one hand in my hair, but he doesn't pull. It just seems like he wants the stability.
Blue, ask him if he stole my jacket, Kara says, narrowing his eyes at the imp on my shoulder.
Why me? The question leaves my mouth before I have the chance to think about it. I don't want to be causing him trouble, but I can't ignore the way the imp pulls in close to me at Kara's harsh tone.
Because you are currently his object-bearer.
Kara heaves a sigh like he's explaining something very basic to a child.
He can't lie to you.
Oh! I nod along. I hadn't realized I was his object-bearer. Though I suppose I am the one holding his necklace, so it probably should have been obvious. Did you steal his jacket? I ask the imp, who's currently busy trying to burrow his way into my hair.
No,
he answers quickly.
You're the only one around here that can stand the strangeling's smell. It's like he's marinating in poison. I'm surprised the Sangin didn't kill you while he had the chance.
Kewin continues, sticking his tongue out at Kara.
Hey, don't talk to him that way,
I chide, my tone slightly harsher than I meant it to be. Kewin just clings to my hair, pouting.
My deepest apologies, Demi. I didn't mean to cause trouble.
I can hear the sulky frown in his voice, but I doubt he's sincere. You saw the Sanjin? I ask, genuinely surprised. Given what Kara had told me, the Sanjin is a very special type of magical beast that doesn't often come out. You were there When we ran into the Sanjin? I can't keep the excitement from my voice.
Yeah,
Kewin answers sheepishly, tangling a couple of strands of hair together in some kind of nervous movement.
I was there, but I thought the wizard boy here might look a little better if he took a dip in the water.
Oh, he's the reason we fell. He's had his eyes on us since we entered the forest. I don't know how he knew we were the ones that had his quest. We didn't even start out looking for him. Kara was treating this whole assignment like a leisurely nature hike at the time.
Blue, stop talking with him. Talking with imps only gets people into trouble,
Kara grumbles, shoving the rest of his things into his pack.
Oh, and you would know, strangeling,
Kewin goads him, practically bouncing on my shoulder.
He's going to say anything that will make you keep talking, Kara continues like he hasn't heard the imp. Don't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. I'm going to go try and find my coat. The two of you wait here. I'll be right back.
Kara buttons his pack, but leaves all his stuff behind as he trudges forward into the woods. I can't help but wonder exactly how likely it is that he will actually find his jacket in the middle of the forest. But I really can't argue. We're done with our assignment, so it's not like we're under any time restraints, and the protective circle is still unbroken, so there shouldn't be anything to worry about, especially considering our main troublemaker seems to be with me.
So,
Kewin drawls, leaning casually against my neck. I'm not supposed to talk to you. I remind him of Kara's instructions that he'd given less than a minute ago.
You hold my binding object. I can't be hostile towards you, and I can only use my powers in your defense. If your master thought that I would be the least bit of a danger to you, do you really think he would have left you alone with me?
The imp pops down from his perch and waves his hands incredulously. I suppose not, I admit, hesitantly. I don't see any real danger in it either. Kara had said that imps are considered evil, but Kewin doesn't seem that bad. If I'm being entirely honest with myself, I was pretty terrified to meet an imp. The way Kara had described them, the way they have no concept of the harm they do, or a particular reason for doing those actions, had reminded me of some of my masters. But Kewin doesn't seem like he'd hurt someone. He nods along with my words before fluttering over to Kara's backpack. The buttons are about as big as his face, but that doesn't seem to stop him or even give him pause as he starts rifling through Kara's things. Stars! Don't make a mess! There's a whimper at the back of my throat, seeing all of Kara's stuff flung out of his backpack, a messy pile growing where he had carefully packed everything away. Kewin glares at me, fixing me with a dead stare as he slowly and carefully continues removing Kara's things from his backpack, setting them in organized little stacks instead of just letting everything fall where it may. I don't know what he's looking for, but he doesn't seem to be disturbing any of the more delicate components. I rifle through my own pack, pulling out the little crabapple buds and the cherry red rose fruits that Kara had been passing me through our little exploration. Maybe the imp is just hungry. He doesn't seem malicious, but he doesn't like Kara for some reason. The imp probably sees invading his privacy as some kind of bizarre retribution. Either way, I pile up as many of the little fruits as I can. If nothing else, it might get him to stop messing with Kara's pack. You looking for some of these? I call, hoping that my offer is tempting. I'm not sure how appetizing all of this forest roughage is, but it seems to get the imp's attention. He looks at my offering with wide eyes, seemingly shocked at what I'm holding out for him. Oh, do you not like fruit? I ask as he continues to stare blankly at me. I guess you eat this kind of stuff all the time. Here, try this. I pull out some of the food that Kara had packed for me. I'm not sure exactly what would be the most enticing to an imp, but I figure bread isn't something he can regularly get a hold of. He pulls a wide-mouthed vial from Kara's pack, clutching it to himself like it's a pillow. The vial is oddly large in his hands, nearly as big as his body. It's almost amusing the way he has to waddle to bring it over before he sits in front of me, making grabby hands for the bread.
"You're a strange one,"
he says as he chomps into the bread, seemingly content to eat with his bottle right next to him.
"Why?"
I chuckle. From my perspective, he's the odd one. Maybe it's an imp custom that you need a large glass vial next to you when you eat.
I guess the strangeling didn't tell you about imps and food. We can't take any on our own. It has to be presented to us. We don't need food, of course, but the textures and flavors are nice. I haven't gotten any in a while, so thanks, Demi."
He beams up at me. His fangs are still unsettling, but it is significantly less threatening when he's just chomping on his little piece of bread. I offer everything else I've gathered as well, and the little piece of the crystal fruit that I'd saved. He seems to appreciate it. The little fruits look hilariously large in his hands. "Why do you keep calling me Demi?" I ask. I don't want to disturb him from the first meal he's had in stars know how long, but it does seem a little odd.
"Same reason I call your king's star Strangeling. It's what you are, ain't it?"
he rasps, shoving the whole piece of crystal fruit into his mouth. It's cute, I have to admit. His cheeks are puffed out like a chipmunk, and he seems happy, but that doesn't make what he's said any more sense. His cheeks are puffed out like a chipmunk, and he seems happy, but that doesn't make what he's said make any more sense. I wait, and even though he seems more focused on his food than he is on elaborating, he does eventually see the confusion written on my features.
"He's a Hume. His girl with the stripes is an Oamenti, and you're a—"
He leaves the statement open-ended, and it takes me a moment to recognize that he wants me to finish the sentence. "I'm a familiar." I try not to let my voice waver. It's true, but something is telling me that the answer is wrong.
"Demi, that's not a—"
The imp quirks a brow, his long ears twitching for a moment before he tries to explain again.
"Look, a dog could be a familiar. A demon could be a familiar. Hell, I could be a familiar. That has nothing to do with what type of being we are."
He says it like it's the simplest thing in the world. Like it doesn't entirely shatter my worldview. Could anything act as a familiar? I suppose that makes sense. Day uses Enoki as a familiar, and he's a demon, or a doll, or whatever. That whole mess is complicated. I have never heard the term Demi before. I try again to get some clarification. It's a struggle to ignore the shaky feeling in my hands, and the urge to scratch at the insides of my wrist. It won't do to bleed here. Stars only know what might come out in this forest if it smells blood.
Fuck, are they not using that anymore? It's been a couple centuries since I've been out and about. I didn't mean to be offensive.
The imp ducks his head, shuffling his feet in place like some chastised child. No, I've only heard my kind called pets or familiars. I try to explain without cringing at how wrong my words sound. Why hadn't I ever thought about that before? We've only ever been called pets or familiars, sometimes strays or ferals, but that's not specific, not in the way human is. My head spins, and I force myself to close my eyes and drink more from the water skin.
Demis, or rather demi-beasts. You share the traits of the beast of your typing and have a muted connection with them.
Kewin explains slowly. watching me closely now to see if this is going over my head. "Would it not be easier to call us beast folk?" I joke half-heartedly. I wonder if I didn't know this because it is something that I simply didn't know? Or if this just isn't something that's well known. Kewin had said he was well over 2 centuries old. Maybe the name did fall out of fashion. It's not like I ever asked what my race was called.
Beast folk are a whole different thing. They've got their own island, last I heard. They're a whole different animal. No pun intended.
He chuckles at his own joke before he falls into a more contemplative posture.
Oh, they tended to call your kind demi-humans,
he mutters, more to himself than to me. What do I try to ask, but Kewing cuts me off.
You know, you sure do seem curious about this. How about we make a deal?
He smiles up at me, the innocent gesture looking so much more vicious with all the teeth it lays bare. What kind of deal? I ask hesitantly. I've already given him all the berries Kara found for me, but it shouldn't be too hard to find more if that's what he wants.
I tell you anything you want to know about your kind, and you give me back my necklace,
he offers, his smile curling into something a little more sinister. I open my mouth to reject his offer out of hand, but something stops me. What other chance will I have to ask? Really ask someone who knows everything? We found him once. We still have another whole day. We could track him down again. It wouldn't be that hard. We know what his binding object is now, so it's not like he could trick us. The necklace is light as I weigh it in my hand. It seems like such a small price to pay. The chain is so thin. Would Kara believe me if I told him it snapped? The dastardly imp pulled too harshly on the chain and ran off with his necklace. It seems believable to my own mind. Kewin has already tried to run off with it once. With every reason that I come up with to simply give this imp what he wants, something pulls at the back of my mind. Kara said that I shouldn't trust this imp, that talking to him can only lead to bad things. As badly as I want to take his offer, I know I can't. I can't betray Kara like that, not even for something this tempting. Kewin seems to realize my answer before I do, slumping back to the forest floor and shoving a crabapple between his teeth. I just turn to put all of Kara's stuff back in his pack, putting everything away as neatly as I can. Hopefully he won't notice the difference, or at the very least we'll be done with this stupid exam before he even notices. Kewin huffs as I try to pick up the vial, hauling it over to my pack and shoving it into the outside pocket of my bag. I want to apologize, but really, what can I say? He just looks so dejected. It's so different from the animated way he was talking earlier. Does he actually smell bad to you? I ask, partially to end the silence, but also in hopes that the unrelated question will perk him back up. I like it when the imp talks, even though he tried to lure me into making a deal.
I mean, yeah. What does he smell like to you?
Kewin huffs, hunching his shoulders as he tries to shift away from me. Leather, I say, trying to remember the last time I scented him, the cozy feeling it caused in my chest as he let me cuddle up with him. Old leather and essential oils. An involuntary smile spreads across my face, only disturbed by the snort Kewin gives.
You demis are supposed to be good with ambient magic. What do you mean you only smell what's on him?
He balks like he's offended on my behalf. I try not to let myself smile, certain that if he realized he was telling me more about my kind on his own, he'd shut himself up. But that doesn't stop me from letting my ears twitch in confusion at what he's said. How am I supposed to smell more than what's on him? I suppose there are some subtler scents that make up Kara, the baser notes of earth and spice that make me feel so safe. Well, I mean, sometimes I smell things that aren't necessarily there, but I figured that was in his soap or something. It's a lie, and I cringe at how bad it sounds. I live with Kara. We share a bathroom. I know what soap he uses. I would be able to distinguish that scent from anything else on him. Judging by the look on Kewin's face, he doesn't believe me either. I smell things, but it's nothing bad. I struggle to find my words, thinking about all the times that Kara's let me scent him. How nice it feels to indulge in something so instinctual without getting pushed away or called weird. He lets me close when I feel bad, or sometimes even when he needs comfort. It's warm, and he smells safe, I finish lamely, and Kewin just throws up his hands.
You cats are always sensitive to intention, but if you aren't there when a shift happens, you can't sense shit.
He grumbles in exasperation, and I wonder if it's true. Hey, if there's something weird going on with Kara, tell me and I'll... My voice dies as Kewin fixes me with a glare, his eye lighting in that same predatory way as he growls. The hunters stalk your azure star, Demi. When your prey is still in its danger's den, contented and unafraid, you will have already met the hunter's head, and you must guide the strangeling then. He shifts his eyes, blinking rapidly until the pale glow is gone from them. You will have a better view of the shadows, Demi. A better view of the hunters, he continues, his voice much more muted as he forces himself to look away from me. What is that? I ask, trying to ignore the waver in my voice.
Why did you think I was bound, Demi? It's my special talent.
He smiles without any humor, looking more pained than satisfied. Why are you telling me this? I ask, but as soon as the question is out, I can't stop the words tumbling out of me. Is this a warning? If I don't know what I'm looking for, how can I keep him safe? Oh, kitty cat, no, he says softly as he patters up to me, placing one of his tiny hands over mine in a consoling gesture.
Nothing in this world can keep him safe.
He smiles, showing off all his sharp teeth.
And besides, I don't believe in fate.
Blue! Are you all right?
I hear Kara's voice, and every muscle in my body tenses as I watch him make his way back to camp, face red with the early morning exercise, but still lacking his jacket. Kewin doesn't say anything as we pack up camp, and neither do I. I'm surprised he doesn't say something, provoke Kara into one of those screaming matches that he seems to love, but he acts well behaved. He perches himself on my shoulder without complaint and tangles his hand in my hair again for support. The woods are quiet in the early morning. There aren't many birds active in the middle of winter, but the sky foxes seem to have taken their place seamlessly. They aren't stable flyers. Kara told me that. Apparently they don't have to carry themselves for long periods of time like birds do. Instead, they get themselves into trees and dive down on the small rodents and insects that make up their prey. I can't help but feel they are obscenely cute, with their winter coats grown in, their gray-speckled little balls of fluff. I try not to hold us back, but I pick as much food as I can recognize to appease the imp. Kewin hesitates to take it the first time, casting a worried glance between me and Kara. But whatever reaction he was expecting doesn't happen. He goes back to stuffing his face in no time. Even in the light of day, the forest is terrifying. Now that I know just a fraction of what lurks in it, I can't help but feel my skin crawl as I try to keep myself only a few steps away from Kara at any moment. I don't want to get lost. I don't want to get attacked. And I most certainly don't want to get split from Kara. It takes me a second to realize exactly why the forest seems so much more foreboding, even though there aren't many shadows or things to lurk in. Nobody's talking. When we first came through, Kara had been rambling, telling me the histories and properties of anything I'd asked about. But now he seems content to simply creep along in silence. I can't help but move my hand to check on Kewin. He's still there, placing a tentative hand on my finger as I get close enough. It's nice, comforting in a way that I didn't know I needed. I hadn't thought being successful in this assignment would affect my master so much. He's so stoic and cold. It's starting to freak me out. There's a shuffling in the woods, and I press right into the small of Kara's back. I know I'm not hidden, but it makes me feel just a fraction safer as we hold our ground. Whatever it is isn't too terribly focused on being stealthy.
"Hello?"
A voice calls out cautiously to us, though they're still obscured by the forest. It sounds like some other student, but Kara's still tense in front of me. I wonder if I should be as reassured by the sound as I am. I try not to think about the possibility of monsters that mimic people's voices. It doesn't take too long before I see a flash of dark navy that stands out well against the milder colors of the forest. It's one of the school's cloaks. There's a crest right on the clasp. None of the first years have them. It's something reserved for the older students, something to mark the passage of their first year. Something that I see a lot more value in celebrating, given how the last 24 hours have gone.
"Hello there. Did you need something?"
Kara offers haltingly, continuing to shield me with his body.
"Oh, no, don't let me bother you," she calls, waving her hands dismissively through the air. "I was just trying to find my way back to the school."
Her voice is unnaturally high with the stress of the moment, and she's breathing shallow and fast like she's been running. She must sense Kara's distrust, even through her panicked state, because she pulls down the hood and reveals herself. She doesn't look too good. The hem of the cloak has gotten ratty with mud, burrs, and nettles collecting on the soft fabric. She's got dark circles under her eyes that contrast wildly with her bright red hair. It only takes me a second to realize that it's dyed. It's not like anyone could have such vibrant color without some help. Her clothes are a little ripped, but it doesn't seem too bad. She probably just got stuck on some bramble. I realize belatedly that this test does more than force students to use their knowledge in a practical setting. It also forces all the mages who have spent their lives indoors studying to interact with the world. I wonder how many of the students have a harder time camping out than dealing with their assignments. At the very least, I suppose it gives them a healthy respect for the scary things they read about.
"You already finished your quest?"
Kara asks, relaxing a little now that the other student has revealed herself.
"Yeah, got a Viracha's compass."
She smiles, holding up a flat, rounded piece of metal that's tarnished around the edges. I can't say it looks anything like a compass. It looks more like a round token. The cardinal directions are carved into the piece, but the discolored rust is eating into the etching. You can barely see the cardinal stars. But I guess that doesn't matter much. There's no working arrow to provide a guide.
"Stars? We have those in these woods?"
Kara chuckles, but when she doesn't laugh with him, he only gapes at her.
"Yeah, just about everything the great mages on high could get a hold of is in this place. Plus everything the crown passes down. Doesn't matter if it's dangerous. They just want the prestige of possessing all the rare creatures."
She rolls her eyes, smiling shyly at Kara. Kara smiles back, and suddenly he's not so tense. There's something odd about that, the way the stiff set of his shoulders loosens as he waves her closer, the coy way she tucks her hair behind her ear as she approaches. "If you have a compass, why are you having so much trouble getting back?" I ask, and it's only then that I realize that I've stepped out from behind Kara to question the mage. I don't have enough time to fully comprehend how stupid I'm being, how precarious a position I'm in, before she turns to me and answers. "Viracha's compass, love." She smiles at me, cocking her hip to one side as she shows off the piece of metal again.
All their magic centers around getting you more lost. The harder you focus on where you want to go, the more you get lost. So you just kind of have to pick the best direction and focus on moving rather than a destination.
Oh! I force myself to speak as I move back behind my master. I don't know why I'm being so stupid. I shouldn't have acted so rudely. I probably would have gotten in trouble if anyone else were my master. But Kara just raises an eyebrow at me as I slink back into place behind him. I can't help the way I grab the back of his shirt. I feel sick to my stomach right now, and I need the anchor. I press my nose into the material, scenting him as deeply as I dare. I know I shouldn't, but I want to feel stable. I want to feel safe. If I catch myself rubbing the end of the shirt over my own scent glands, well, that's just instinct, making me act oddly.
You done with your quest? She asks, looking over the two of us. Oh, yes, meet Kewin. Kara nods, pulling me out from behind him and gesturing to the creature on my shoulder. He doesn't get the chance to finish his introductions as Kewin cuts him off.
Hi there!
The imp chimes, sweeter and more jovial than I've ever heard him.
Oh, a bound imp!
She recognizes Kewin immediately, and for some reason it makes me angry. I don't like that she knows exactly what Kewin is, and I hate that I have no idea what a Vadacha is even more.
What's your power, little guy?
She comes closer, smiling sweetly in my face, and even though I know it's to talk with Kewin, I don't want her any closer.
I can see the future,
the imp chatters, speaking with the enthusiasm of a toddler telling a secret, but his answer makes her frown. I am so sorry about that. She says it with such genuine pain in her voice that it gives me pause. I feel Kewin shift on my shoulder. I don't know if she's making him as uncomfortable as me, but he definitely pulls himself a little closer to me. He tugs on my hair gently. I don't know if the gesture is meant to comfort me or comfort him, but before I can figure it out, she's out of our faces. She coughs loudly, a dry, raspy cough that makes me wonder if she got sick out here. She pulls away from us as she struggles to take in air and get her lungs to function properly. She doesn't look sick, but there's a sound in her lungs that feels bad. Kara moves to help her, but she only holds out her hand to stop him, reaching into the pocket of her cloak to pull out an odd-looking vial. The vial's shaped almost like a teardrop. Clear, multifaceted glass conceals the exact volume, but still shows off the opaque liquid inside. There's 2 red crystals, one at the top and one in the center. And as she shoves the thin crystal at the top of the vial in her mouth, I realize that the center crystal must act as some kind of activator. When she presses it, there's a soft whooshing sound before her chest begins to rise and fall at a better pace. She takes one more puff before she pulls the thing out of her mouth and puts it back into her cloak. Sorry, I thought I could get away with not bringing it, but I guess it's better that I did. She gives a strained smile as she smooths down her clothes. That was terribly unattractive, I suppose, coughing up a lung in front of you all. She asks hesitantly. No, not at all. It's why you have 2, right? Kara chuckles before he gives her a once-over, his quirked smile betraying only a touch of his underlying seriousness. Are you all right? Yeah, my dad smoked too much, though. I'll be fine. Just give me a moment. It'll pass. She stays still, leaning up against a tree and breathing deeply for a few moments. Would you like to travel with us? Kara asks gently. You can hold on to your compass and just focus on following us. When Kara offers, I'm not surprised, but I do feel a little conflicted. It's a sound plan, but that doesn't set the odd, anxious feeling she gives me at ease. That would be lovely. She nods along as her eyes flick to me. This is your familiar, yes? She asks. I can't tell if she's trying to sound casual, but if she is, she's failing. Yes, Kara answers hesitantly, keeping himself between me and the girl. I can't help the warm feeling it leaves in my chest, or the smile it brings to my face.
Do you have a familiar I should be watching out for? He asks, shifting the question back to her. Oh, no, I didn't come with a familiar. She waves her hand dismissively as the grin spreads across her face. But that would make you Kara then, right?
I'm momentarily confused as to why she knows him. He's a first year, so there's no reason she would have a class with him. I sure as hell don't recognize her. But then I realize why she was asking about me. Just about everybody had heard about the student who registered with a common cat as their familiar. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that people are looking a little bit closer, given the scene we caused with our casting.
I am Kara, and you're Fliara of House Lepridis, right?
Kara responds smoothly as I try not to gape at him. He knows people? My mind reels as I try to process what's happening in front of me. I had thought Kara was something of an outsider, given how the other students treated him and his lack of family backing. I assumed he didn't know any of the highborn houses. I don't even know the House of Lepridis, though I can't deny it sounds familiar. They're probably a very important family for even Kara to have recognized her.
Oh, I'm surprised you know me.
She chuckles, mirroring my own thoughts.
Please, everybody calls me Flea. Have since I was a kid. Nice to meet you, Flea.
He grins like he's in on a joke, but I can't for the life of me figure it out. It's easier traveling with Flea. Suddenly, Kara doesn't feel like traveling in silence. Probably because we have to keep her distracted so she's not focused on a destination. But that doesn't explain the pleased smile that seems permanently affixed to his face. They talk about school and spells and weird things that they've found in the forest, and I try to keep the odd, bitter feeling in my chest to myself. I wish I had a reason to hate her, but she's perfectly nice. She doesn't look down on me because I'm a weak constitution familiar, nor does she seem to have a poor opinion of my master for his less than noble origins. She treats us cordially, as though we were guests of high esteem that she were responsible for entertaining. She even tries to pull me into the conversation when she notices I'm lagging behind or confused about the way they're talking about spellcraft. She asks before she touches me, and as if that isn't ridiculous enough, when I don't answer, she simply puts her hand down. Kara doesn't say anything to her, but neither does she demand an apology. And when he turns to me and fishes the leaf out of my hair himself, I can't exactly bring myself to be resentful. Either way, I take the opportunity to do something productive with myself and comb my hair out as best I can with just my fingers. It's better than just seething and willing myself to understand what the mages are talking about. Eventually, we get to a point that even I can see the trees growing less dense. Finally, back to the school. There's a loud cracking sound behind us. It sounds something like a tree being rent apart, but it's far too loud. I can hear the squawking of different animals, the breaking of branches, and the crunch of fallen leaves as the forest creatures run.
Oh, that bitch, Kewin mumbles to himself, but before I can ask him what he means, the ground is shaking beneath me. There's a deafening roar, but it doesn't sound feral so much as old, primal, and dangerous in a way that I've felt before. There's something in me that instinctually recoils at the sound, and my whole body screams at me that I should be running.
Oh, that is not good, Flea points out, unhelpfully, staring into the forest in slack-jawed horror as though whatever awful entity that's screaming is going to burst out of the forest any second now.
Run!
Kara shouts, pulling us out of our own horror. Flea's faster than us, that much is obvious as we start our little sprint to safety, but she doesn't have much to carry in terms of supplies.
That's not going to work,
Kewin whispers in an almost dreamlike state before he seems to shock back into his body, pulling on my hair, screeching,
"Stop!"
The lance of pain is enough to make my steps falter, and Kara stops beside me, just moments before a tree falls in our path.
The force of the wide trunk slamming into the ground kicks up dirt and sends a tremble through the ground that weakens my knees. If we hadn't stopped...
Don't worry about your girl. She's fast, and with the amount of blind panic filling her, she probably won't have any more trouble sprinting to school,
Kewin says as he repositions himself on my shoulder, taking a new hold of my hair. How did you... Kara's voice trembles as he voices my own question, but Kewin cuts him off before he can finish.
King of Foresight over here, very useful when things are raining down on your heads,
he chimes, and though he's still resting on my shoulder, I swear I can see his smirk.
All right, King of Foresight, what are we supposed to do here?
Kara asks, forcing himself to look away from the tree that almost flattened us.
Oh, strangeling, you know how to fight big monsters, don't you? What's a little forest god?
I have to fight that thing?
Kara's voice is low, but not scared, as though the prospect of having to fight something that can throw fully grown trees as projectiles doesn't disturb him as much as anything else that Kewin said.
It gives you what you want,
Kewin hedges, sounding far away again, though I can't see if it is definitively the best option.
Keep Blue safe,
Kara damn near orders as he goes to one knee, stripping the clunkier supplies off his backpack.
Wouldn't dream of letting my bearer get hurt,
Kewin answers in kind as Kara bolts further into the forest.
What are we supposed to do?
I can't help the way my voice wavers as I watch Kara disappear.
Do we go back to the school and wait for...
I try to think of the best course of action, but Kewin cuts me off.
No, come on, I'll tell you where to go,
he says gently, patting the shoulder he's riding on consolingly. Apparently, telling me is pulling on my hair for left or right like I really am his mount. Disturbingly, I do very much fit the part, as Kewin has to continue whispering encouragement and patting at my neck in an effort to be soothing, especially as the sounds of battle pick up. The loud roaring and snarling of a beast that I know well enough to fear instinctually starts to get interspersed with very human shouting. There's lights shooting out above the canopy, and I can't tell which attacks are coming from the mages and which come from the beast. Kewin had said it was a forest god. I've certainly never heard of such a creature before, but that just makes it one of presumably thousands of creatures. Whatever it is, it's big, it's angry, and it's holding its own.
Here, right here.
Kewin stops me, but I can see no difference between this clearing and the stretch of trees that we had just left.
How is this safe? The imp has backed me into a corner with nothing but a wide open space in front of me. I would think that this would be dangerous. I'm very easy to see, and whatever drops out of the sky will face no resistance before it strikes the ground. I go to tell Kewin this, but he just jumps into my backpack.
Quick! Open your bottle!
He screeches, fumbling around in the pockets. It's odd, all these abilities to see into the future, and he can't remember that I put the bottle in the outside pocket. I get the vial in my hand just as there's a deafening boom. Kewin's right there in front of my face, his mouth moving, but there's no words coming out. My whole body feels almost detached as I realize that I'm on the ground, and Kewin is shouting at me. I've just been rendered deaf for a few seconds.
Quick, quick! Put it in the glass!
The imp cries, pulling at my hand as much as he can with his tiny size. It's almost endearing how he thinks he can pull me up, but the way my head swims as I try to sit up makes me grateful for any help. My bones feel like they're liquid, and my whole body is shaky because of it. My fingers are sticking to something, and I have to pull my hand closer to examine exactly what I've gotten on them. I fully expect to see red, to have hurt myself so badly that my body isn't even processing the pain, but the oddly warm goo sticking to my fingers is green. The viscous green liquid has spattered all over the clearing, leaking out of a long, wide tendril that seems to be mostly composed of other vines all woven together. Suddenly, Kewin's words make a little more sense.
though I don't entirely understand why this is so important. I can't force my knees to take my weight, so I drag myself forward on all fours, holding the bottle to one of the places where that sticky sap is leaking. It doesn't take long to fill, not with how the wound is leaking, almost like blood. There are more sounds of battle, explosions and weakening, garbled roars. I force myself to focus, filling the vial as much as I can and reaffixing the fitted top before any can come out.
Put it away! Put it away! We have to go!
Kewin pulls at my hair, trying to pull me along with him. I shove the vial into my bag, but my attention is far from the imp. The green goo that I've been shoveling into that vial has seeped into the ground. Every place that it touched has sprung up with new plant growth, some of which I barely recognize. The tendril itself is rapidly decomposing, becoming a fresh mound of soft, crumpled topsoil that's already teeming with moss. I let myself watch for a moment. I might not be very good with plants, but Kara is. I don't doubt that he would be able to identify this soil as very good, whether that's nutrient-rich or a comprehensive gardening mix, all the other things I've seen on his bags of potting soil. Kewin gets insistent, pulling on my ears until I start moving with him. He leads me through the forest until we find ourselves at the buffer zone where all the students had gathered the day before. I can see the school from here as it's the only standing marker on the relatively flat space before us. The odd man with the hat is there, waiting, I assume, for any student that comes out of the woods. He gives me an odd look. I suppose it must be strange to see a familiar come out of the woods unaccompanied rather than the other way around. I tell him about the odd creature my master ran off to fight, the loud noises and scary lights that he no doubt could see from his vantage point, and the fact that he'd already completed his quest when he decided to help out. The man sends me back to the school to wait for my master there, but I don't miss the impressed look in his eyes or the smile that he seems unaware is on his lips. As excited as I am to be out of the forest, being back at school without Kara isn't exactly what I'd had in mind. One of the assistants is assigned to escort me to wait for my master at the care center, and though there's no one around, I only briefly entertain the idea of signing myself out to wait for Kara somewhere else. At the care center, there's someone watching. There are people employed specifically to monitor familiars, and that has the incredibly beneficial side effect of being somewhat protected. They had already tried to take Kewin on the way in, insisting that they could process us and get us out as soon as my master came back from the woods. I let myself play dumb, shaking my head and pouting as I repeatedly tell them how specific my master's instructions were, that I was to run to safety while he dealt with the threat, and I would be in big trouble if he didn't find me with his assigned object. Truthfully, I don't want to give Kewin up to anyone. I don't want the imp getting lost, and there being no proof that we finished the assignment. It doesn't take long before they stop trying to argue with the familiar that just keeps repeating his master's orders instead of giving them what they want. It feels oddly good to watch them back away empty-handed. Eventually, Kara does come back, with soot in his hair and his coat a little ripped, but he comes back. He doesn't seem injured, and he doesn't even complain when the school makes him go through the longest debriefing known to man. In fact, he stays mostly tight-lipped about everything that happened, much to the frustration of the person writing the report. He doesn't say anything about the Rokatari, or Flea, or even the Sanjin. I don't understand why he's not taking the opportunity to build on his reputation or gild his accolades, but there's nothing I can do to argue with what he's saying. It isn't until we're in a carriage home that his calm and exacting facade drops. As soon as the door closes, he pulls me into his arms, squeezing me until I'm sure that I'm going to need a puff of whatever Flea uses if I'm ever going to breathe right again.
"Blue! Oh, stars, Blue, did you see that?"
He mumbles into my hair. Even with my back pressed to him, I can feel his giddiness, the smile that must be stretching from ear to ear.
"Even in the heart of winter, that thing made everything bloom. Stars, if I could get my hands on some of that stuff. I mean, so long as it's unactivated."
He rambles until I force myself to use my voice.
"Kara?"
I call, and predictably enough, he stops what he's doing to listen. I disentangle myself from his grasp and pull out my backpack, fumbling with the pockets for a second before I pull out the bottle. Kara quirks his brow as I pass it over to him, turning it around in his hands before understanding dawns on his face. I have no chance getting out of his arms before the carriage drops us at home.